Good morning, guys. Well, it might be afternoon for you. It depends on when you start this. So here's what we're going to be doing today is we're going to continue this idea of that line for a starter. And then for the rest of the assignment, it's going to be focusing on something called the distance formula, which I'm pretty sure you learned in 8th grade. But from now, I'm not sure. And it might be a really good refresher for you. It might be something completely new. All right, so we're looking on this first one, we're looking for a line that passes through this point. And notice they give you the point slope form right here. It's very nice. And it's going to be parallel to this line. So the very first thing we need to do is identify the slope in that line. That slope is 1/3. If I'm going to be parallel, the slope is going to remain the same. So that means that my slope is 1/3. Now my point, this is my x value, this is my y value. My x is going to go where the x1 is, so 6 goes here. And then my y is going to go where my y1 is. So now I can write my equation. So it's going to be y, hold on, I want to write that a little higher. Y minus -2 equals, and then I'm going to have 1/3 times x minus 6. Now, I want to simplify this so it says y equals. It makes me feel better. If you're using Desmos, you could technically stop here. If you're using our calculators in our classroom, you can't actually stop here. You need to go a little bit further. So the first thing I would recognize is that if this is minus a negative, it's the same thing as plus a positive. And then from here, I'm going to distribute that 1/3. So then I would have y plus 2 equals, and then we'll have 1/3 x minus 2. 1/3 times -6 is a -2. All right, from here, all I have to do is subtract the 2 from both sides. And I get y equals 1/3 x minus 4. And there's my new equation of a line that's parallel to 1/3 x minus 8 and goes through 6, -2. All right, so on this next one, we want it to be perpendicular this time. Now remember, perpendicular is going to take the slope, which notice that the line is exactly the same. We're going to take the slope, and we're actually going to flip it over, so that'd be 3/1, and change the sign. So that'd be -3/1. Again, this is my x, this is my y. So now the only change is that my slope became from 1/3 to -3, because -3 divided by 1 is just -3. All right, so now I'm going to start off my equation. So I've still got y minus -2 equals, and then my slope is -3 times, and then it'll be x minus 6. Again, you should notice that minus a negative is the same thing as plus a positive. So then we have y plus 2 equals, and I'm going to distribute that -3, -3x minus, well actually plus, because negative times negative is positive, 18. So now all I've got to do is subtract the 2 from both sides. And I end up with, and I'm going to write the equation right next to the perpendicular, y equals -3x plus 16. Sorry, that's my dog in the background. He wants let in. It's an exciting time for all of us. All right. Do you guys have any questions? If you do, please leave a comment below that has your question in it. All right. So today what we're doing is we're talking about the distance formula to solve equations. Okay, and we're going to get very slowly into this today, not as long. So our goal here is to find the perimeter of the triangle by finding the side of A, B, and C. So A and B are actually really easy. A is only 1, 2, 3, 4 tall. And B is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 long. Now we can find C using Pythagorean theorem, which we know is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. And right now a, b, and c are in exactly the right spots. So we're going to do 4 squared plus 7 squared equals c squared. So I type into my handy dandy calculator, which I don't currently have on, so let's go find it. Calculator. Beautiful. Okay, so we need to do 4 squared plus 7 squared. And that's 65. So I end up with 65 equals c squared. So if I take the square root of both sides, I end up with c equals the square root of 65. If it was asking me to round to a decimal, I would plug in the square root of 65 into my calculator, and I would get, not that number, 65 square root, it's 8.062. All right, so either one of these could be my answer. This is rounded. This is exact. All right. Okay, on this next one, it says find the length of a segment CD. If you notice, it doesn't give us the other information. So I'm going to make another triangle out of this. So I'm going to go down from C and then over to D so I can find this length. Notice I've created a right triangle. This length right here is 3. This length right here is 4. So I'm going to do 3 squared plus 4 squared equals x squared. Several of you, because of what you said in Pythagorean theorem, should already know what x should be. But if you haven't noticed yet, that's okay. We can go ahead and use our calculator. So we're going to do 3 squared plus 4 squared, and we're going to get 25. So we have 25 equals x squared. So if we take the square root of both sides, we would end up with x equals 5. So our length is 5. All right, so let's take a look at this one. Notice that now we don't have the nice pretty graph, but I can still figure out this distance. Notice that it says find the length and it gives you 2 points. It's exactly the same. So I know that so this is 3 tall and this is -2 tall. So if I'm 3 tall and this is -2 tall, this is going to be 3, 2, 1, 0, -1, -2. That's 5. Okay, and then this is going to be over from 1 to 7. And I can get that 5, by the way, by doing 3 minus -2. Okay, and then right here, this is from 1 to 7. So if I go over from 1 to 7, that's going to be 6 long. Okay, and again, I get that by taking 7 minus 1. Notice the 7's here, the 1's here. For that other problem, the -2's here, the 3's here. Okay, so now I know that's 5 long and that's 6 long, so I can use Pythagorean theorem. 5 squared plus 6 squared is going to equal r squared. So here's where I pull out my handy dandy calculator. I do 5 squared plus 6 squared, and I get 61 equals r squared. So I'm going to take the square root of both sides, and I get r equals the square root of 61. And if I take the square root of 61, I find it to be approximately 7.810. If you want to write it out to 3 decimal places. Again, this is rounded. This is exact. All right, again, if you have questions, please ask them below. Okay, I want you, this is having me show you the distance formula. I'm going to show you what the exact distance formula looks like. It's exactly what we did here on this slide, but we're going to now do it here. So this is super exciting for us. Okay, so if I'm going to do the distance formula, you'll notice that I've got this line right here. I've got x1, y1, x2, y2. So now if I want to find the distance, so notice this is a change in y, it's a change in my height from here to here, then I'm just going to take y2 minus y1. That'll find my change in height. And then I'm going to square that, because this length right here is just y2 minus y1. Okay? And we're finding side length C. Notice that we're not finding A or B. Okay, and then we would add that because this is B squared. Now we're going to find A squared. Okay, now for A, notice that this is a change in your x's. So this will be x2 minus x1. So this will be x2 minus x1 squared. Here's my a squared. So I have a squared plus b squared, and that equals c squared. Well, if I want to solve for c now, I have to square root both sides, right? Because c is almost all by itself. So if I square root this, I'll get c, right? So c equals the square root of y2 minus y1 squared plus x2 minus x1 squared. And you can flip the x2, the x's and the y's places as long as you've flipped the whole x or the whole y. But this is actually the distance formula. This right here. If you want to, you can write this down. I tend to just draw a picture and use Pythagorean theorem. You're allowed to use anything you want. Actually, I'm going to change that to a box. Okay. So right here, we're going to find the side length C. Now, I like doing this the way that I've been showing you. I find this distance, so it's from 1 to 9, so I know that's 8 long. This is from -6 to +7. I know that's, is that 13? Let's see, 7 minus -6. 7 minus a negative, so minus 6, negative, there we go. And I get 13. Okay, so this is 13 long. Okay, so now if I want to find C, I'm going to use Pythagorean theorem. So 8 squared plus 13 squared equals C squared. So then in my handy-dandy calculator, I'm going to do 8 squared plus 13 squared. And I get 233 equals C squared. So now I'm going to square root both sides. And I get C equals the square root of 233. Which isn't super pretty number when I take the square root of it. It's 15.264. That's the length of the line. Now, this is the distance formula, so you could have done this. So we're taking the line, the endpoints of C. So we've got -6, 9, and 7, 1. So this is the distance formula. You've got the square root. Then we're going to do 7 minus -6 squared plus 1 minus 9 squared equals C. Which if you do this, you would end up with the square root of 13 squared plus -8 squared equals C, which would then become the square root of 233 equals C. Notice that these get you the same answer. Whichever one you are feeling more comfortable with or makes more sense to you, use that one. Please don't use something just because I'm using it. I encourage you to use whichever one makes sense. All right, so we're going to find the length of P now. Notice that it gives us this nice pretty line. So it's 2, 4, and 8, -1. Again, I'm just going to use what I like to use. I'm not going to use Pythagorean theorem. So I know that this line right here is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 long. And then this line right here is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 long. So this is going to be 5 squared plus 6 squared equals P squared. So I use my handy-dandy calculator. I do 5 squared plus 6 squared, and I get 61 equals P squared. So then I need to square root both sides, and I get P equals the square root of 61. And if you actually found the square root of 61, you get 7.810. Okay, I want you guys to try this one, either using the distance formula or using Pythagorean theorem in its raw form. I don't care which one you use. I want you to use one of them though. All right, so now I'm going to go through it, okay? So right here, I know that this is from -5 to +2. That's going to be 7 long. This is from 7 down to 1. This is going to be 6 long. So now this would be 7 squared plus 6 squared equals T squared. So I pull out my calculator. I do 7 squared plus 6 squared, and I get 85 equals t squared. If I take the square root of both sides, I get t equals, if we take the square root of 85, it's 9.2195, so that's going to be 9.22. Or you can just leave it as the square root of 85. I hope you guys got that right. That's really awesome if you did. If you didn't, here's a new chance for you. What I like to do when I have things like this is I like to sketch them. So if I went over 1, so this is 1, and I go up 5, there's that point. And if I go over 3 and up 1, there's that point. So now here's my line. So now I want to know this height. Well, this height from 5 to 1 is 4 long. And this length from 1 to 3 is 2 long. So I can do 4 squared plus 2 squared, and I'm just going to label this as x, equals x squared. So I pull out my handy dandy calculator, I do 4 squared plus 2 squared, and I get 20. Okay, so then I take the square root of both sides, and x is either going to equal the square root of 20, or you can find the decimal, and you get 4.472. All right, this is our last problem for today. So we're going to find the distance between these 2 points. Again, I really like to sketch these. So this one's over 1, up 5. That's great. This next one's over 5. That's 1, up 8. So here's the first point. Here's the second point. So there's my thing. So I know between 1 and 5, this is 4 long. Between 5 and 8, that's 3 long. So a lot of you might even know what the length of my, I'm going to call it x again, is going to be, but some of you might not. So let's go ahead and do it. So this would be 3 squared, nope, 3 squared plus 4 squared gives me a 25. So I have 25 equals x squared. So if I take the square root of both sides, I get x equals 5. Hopefully you guys all got that. Today, what we learned is we learned the distance formula. We're just learning it and applying it in very simple situations currently. Okay? Please do the learning activity and participate in the discussion. Love you guys so much.